Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And hello again, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV. As mentioned, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Our Tumblr is right there. Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. We got a lot to discuss tonight. Of course, transfer portal. We got news from football, but we're going to begin with basketball because it looks like Nate Oats may have landed the missing piece in what is, on paper, one of the most impressive rosters in the country going into next season. Rutgers transfer center Cliff Omoruyi announced his commitment to Alabama on Sunday, giving the Crimson Tide one of the best rim protectors in the country and giving head coach Nate Oats, as I mentioned, on paper, a roster that is one of the best in the entire nation. Omoruyi chose Nate Oats' program over North Carolina, Kansas State, and Georgetown. Despite a down season for the Scarlet Knights in terms of their record, Omoruyi, a 6'11" center from Nigeria, they had high expectations, was the anchor for one of the best defensive teams in the country. He earned all Big Ten honors and all defensive team honors in each of the past two seasons, and that's in the Big Ten, so, you know, serious league. You see the video of him here. He averaged 10.4 points and 8.3 rebounds this past season while ranking third nationally in block shots. Listen to this, 2.9, right at 3 a game. That's huge for this team, and his numbers in terms of his scoring and rebounding were even better this season before this one. All right, Rodney, let me bring you in here. And let me see here. I'm going to pull the roster up that I printed out, what could be. But let's talk about Omoruyi, and then we'll talk about what he's going to be with. But he was the guy. Don't get me wrong. You got Aiden Sherrill coming in as a freshman, but he's a freshman. He hasn't played. This guy's proven that he can play at the highest level in the country in the Big Ten and at times be dominant. You see the physicality that he possesses, huge hands. The basketball looks like a volleyball in his hand, either one. Runs the floor. Now, he's not going to be out there shooting three-pointers. Everybody else will be able to do that, but not him. But around the basket, dunks with ferociousness, just a real physical presence. I see why Alabama was all in on him as far as that being the guy they wanted out of the portal.
Yeah, he was a man. I mean, he's a beast, as you called him, Gary. I mean, when you look at him, 6'11", 240, the way he's built. You know, the interesting thing is, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Nate Oats' system, how attractive it is to players because it's much like the NBA. And I think that's one of the things Cliff Omoruyi said. You know, when it came down to making that decision, it's his opportunity to play here in that system that can help him develop and prepare for the future. So I think that was really a big key.
We mentioned this last week when Alabama was trying to land Omoruyi. They've beaten North Carolina for top recruits the last two seasons. Jaron Stevenson last year, although he did reclassify, and I'm not sure he could have done that at North Carolina. They were ready for him to do that. But still, that's the school that he was most connected to. And now Cliff Omoruyi. You know, when you're talking North Carolina in basketball, you're talking Alabama in football. This is one of the true blue bloods in college basketball. And when you're going head-to-head with them and beating them for recruits, beating them twice in a row on the floor. Remember, they beat them, you know, in that 4 overtime game and, of course, in the Final Four. This is where Alabama's at now. Nothing against other schools, but they're going up against the Kansases, the Kentuckys, the North Carolinas, the UCLA's, and winning these battles.
They're winning the battles. I mean, that's a key. And, you know, I saw a North Carolina website. One of their moderators said, look, Hubert Davis's nightmare has to be Nate Oats right now because, you know, the things that Alabama's doing in terms of this recruiting has been really phenomenal. But, again, Gary, I saw another tweet and to share is talking about the NIL, the impact that NIL has. So there's really 3 programs right now that NIL – they don't have to be the highest bidder. It's UConn, Baylor, and Alabama. How amazing is that?
In fact, Joe Tipton from On3 did report on X that he was told that Omoruyi was offered $2 million by a school not named Alabama. And I'm confident talking to people that I know that Alabama did not give him anywhere close to that NIL. He's getting a nice NIL package. Let's be clear on that, but not to that number. But I think it speaks to the program, the way they were, the vision they had for him, getting guys to the NBA right now, and also, probably in regards to just making everybody that's around him and associated with this decision comfortable and feeling like it was the right thing to come to Alabama.
I think it's a great way to put it. And I think that was the final analysis was, look, Alabama's the choice. And again, I go back to what we said earlier. I really think the Nate Oats system played a big role in this.
All right, more on the roster in a moment, but one guy, we mentioned Jaron Stevenson. Now, he's technically still in the NBA draft. He has been invited to the G League draft combine along with Aaron Estrada, who Alabama's going to miss Aaron Estrada, by the way. He's out of eligibility. You still can run out of eligibility in the COVID era. But Jaron Stevenson, I think, as we said last week, he's getting feedback. He's a good player. Everything I am told is to expect him back in an Alabama uniform this season.
That seems to be, basically the way it's trending, Gary, is he'll be back. But again, waiting on that final word, and of course with Sears too.
All right, Rodney, now this roster. Again, if Sears comes back, it's even better, obviously. He's a second-team All-American, first-team All-SEC. But this is what it looks like right now. Possibility on Sears. But all these other guys they're here. Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell Jr., Chris Youngblood, Cliff Omoruyi, Houston Millett, Jaron Stevenson, Mo Diabate, Darian Reed, Aiden Sherrill, Nas Cunningham, LeBaron Philon, and Aiden Holloway. That is a star-stacked lineup. Most of these guys, 4 or 5 stars coming out of high school, some of them transferring in from other programs. Again, it's on paper. This team's never played together, but it'd be hard to find a more talented roster in terms of just looking at it like I am right now.
Well, I kind of have to laugh. On TighterInsider.com, they said the Alabama second team would be a top 20 program, and they might be. They're all 4- and 5-star rated players.
Sounds like when Nick Saban got here. Just a different way of doing it with the portal, but boy, good times right now for Alabama, and good times ahead as well. As now Oats has gotten to the Final Four. He's looking to take the next step now. It's the only thing left is to win the national championship. All right, some sad news now. Former Alabama football player and athletics director Cecil Hootie Ingram died on Monday morning at the age of 90. Prior to a successful career as a coach and administrator, Coach Ingram was an all-SEC defensive back for the Crimson Tide in the early 1950s. In fact, his 10 interceptions in 1952 still stand as a single-season Alabama record. He played one season with the NFL's Philadelphia Eagles in 1955 before beginning a successful coaching career. He started in the high school ranks before moving to college football as an assistant, and then was named the head coach at Clemson in 1970, where he guided the Tigers program for 3 seasons. After a stint as an administrator in the SEC office, he became the AD at Florida State in 1981, and after a very successful tenure with the Seminoles, came back to Alabama as AD in 1989 and served in that capacity until 1995. Friendly and engaging, Coach Ingram will be missed. Prayers and condolences to his family. And Rodney, we both knew him well, and you had really stayed in touch with him. I played a lot of golf with him when I first took this job, and the late Coach Pete Pearson as well. One thing about Coach Ingram, he was, like I said, friendly and engaging, but he would tell you what he thought, and he would tell you the truth. He wouldn't tell you something just to make you feel good. I loved him, and, he's going to be missed.
He really is, and he called me on Friday. I'm thankful for that opportunity that he did call me. We did have a really good relationship. We talked almost 30 minutes on Friday. Gary seemed upbeat. He was really positive, and I'm really going to miss the calls from Coach Ingram. I heard from him regularly. There's one thing for sure. He loved Alabama.
Yeah, and a little bit of irony here. He passed about 3 weeks after Steve Sloan, who was his predecessor as the AD at Alabama, had passed away much younger at 79, but a little irony there.
In the Friday conversation that we had, he mentioned Steve Sloan's passing to me and said they had a great relationship.
And, Rodney, there's been some discussion on social media since his passing about his role in the probation that Alabama got hit with the Antonio Langham situation. I talked to Coach Ingram about it. He didn't want to talk much about it. He said, I look forward. I don't look back. That's what he told me. But I always felt like he did the right thing and handled that properly, and that the NCAA just didn't see it that way. And he did leave after during 1995, but I will never believe that he did anything other than try to handle that situation the right way.
No, I think as the leader, he took the hit. And stepped down. And, there were a lot of things that happened in that investigation that, of course, you remember, Gary. It was a very controversial investigation.
Beyond controversial.
Yes.
I mean, nobody's going to convince me that somebody just didn't have it in for Alabama with that deal. R.I.P. Coach Ingram. All right, still to come on Tighter Insider Television. Find out which incoming football recruit could be in the mix for immediate playing time this fall, and find out the latest recruiting intel from Mr. Tighter Insider himself, Rodney Orr. Alabama could be on the verge of landing a commitment from the transfer portal. we'll have the latest. And coming up, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, that phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us or tweet at us, X at us, Twix at us, whatever you want to call it on social media as well. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. And we're back on TITV, brought to you each week by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Plenty of buzz on Alabama football with which players they're recruiting in the portal, and, of course, still obviously recruiting high school players as well. A lot of speculation and even reports out that Wake Forest defensive back Deshaun Jones is going to commit to Alabama. Matt Zenitz of 247 Sports was the first to report that. Now, Jones is a guy that was on campus this past weekend for an official visit. We know Alabama needs cornerbacks, and he's a native of Baltimore. He played in 22 games over the past 2 seasons at Wake Forest and started most of them. In fact, last season he led Wake Forest with 3 interceptions. He also had 37 tackles, including 27 solos. And this is a guy who can find the football. He's not the biggest guy. So, but we know at corner, you know, sometimes size has to be secondary to be able to cover guys, and he can do that.
Yeah, he can, Gary. And, you know, I actually talked to some people in the NFL that played in the NFL, played the position in the NFL. They talked about him, his ability to cover the field. There you see him there making a great play on the ball there like a center fielder. But, yeah, he feels comfortable on both sides of the field. And he also, Gary, very physical, as you kind of mentioned. Even though he's not the biggest guy, he is really physical, good tackler. I think all of those things, great attributes, obviously.
Yeah,
and the experience.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Experience
That's the big thing. About 180 pounds. So, Rodney, is it your expectation that he is going to wind up at Alabama?
That's the expectation. I mean, you never can predict these things with 100% certainty, but that's the expectation. And I go back to what we said last week, too, Gary. The experience factor with Damani Jackson on that other side, all those young corners, he'll fit in really well.
What about some other transfer possibilities for Alabama?
Well, I think, you know, we've talked about the offensive line, the need to kind of bolster the numbers there. I don't think they're going to get as many as they probably need, but I do think Geno Vandermark from Michigan State is a player to really watch there. He's a guy that's got some experience at center. That's really big. He also played under Coach Cap, the new offensive line coach here at Alabama. So I think that's really an important factor for him, about 6'5", 300 pounds. King Mack is a safety, played at Penn State, was a freshman last year. He was here in Tuscaloosa on a visit this past weekend, Gary. He's ran a 10.600 meters. He's got speed. Again, not the biggest guy, about 5'10", 190, but, you know, has a lot of potential. He's only a true freshman this past year.
Rodney, Alabama really working the portal for defensive backs as we're looking at video of King Mack right now. I have seen some posters on your board say, well, what are we doing? I mean, you know, hasn't Alabama recruited a lot of defensive backs? And I know they feel like they've got some talent on hand, but this is especially in the defense they're running now with Kane Womack, this is a position where you got to have a lot of guys,
yeah.
and they want to increase their numbers. Doesn't mean it's not an indictment on the players that are here.
Exactly.
In fact, most of the players that are here, you know, are going to play a lot of football, but they need some numbers.
Depth.
Yeah.
Yep, there's no question about that, Gary. And I think we talked about that. They've got some youth at the corner spot, so that's why I really think Deshaun Jones would be a big pickup, as we mentioned. The experience in terms of bringing in Cam Howard, I think he's an experienced player from Charlotte that we mentioned last week. Now King Mack possibly as well. You've got to have the numbers. And go back and look at the guys who've left the program. Tony Mitchell, Peyton Woodward here recently. Go back even further. Caleb Downs obviously was a major loss, and all the others that they've lost. Earl Little. You could go on and on and on with the number of guys that they've lost in the secondary.
Well, let's get to Tony Mitchell because he is the latest. And, of course, he was a big star at Thompson High School, signed with Alabama, had a little legal issue, but got back on the team. He's leaving with 3 years of eligibility remaining. This was a guy in high school that could bring it. Big, physical, fast. High hopes for him at Alabama, but it didn't pan out. What do you think led to his decision to go somewhere else?
You know, Gary, look, you look at him right there physically. I remember Coach Mark Freeman at Thompson telling me, I think he's going to be another Mark Barron. And he's got a lot of talent. I mean, he was a 5-star kid rated by most people for a reason. Had a lot of great offers. And, you know, it just didn't pan out here. And I think he this spring he did get some opportunities, but I assume he just didn't feel comfortable. And we talked about this way before the portal opened, said watch out for Tony Mitchell. He may be a guy that hits the portal.
Yep, he is going somewhere else. All right, it's time now for Coach Talk. Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer was in Mobile last week to give the keynote address at the 16th annual Team Focus banquet and fundraiser, and he was asked about a possible 2024 role for Ryan Williams. Of course, you're in Mobile, you're going to get asked about the 5-star from Saraland High School who is going to be on campus this summer and what his role might be as a 2-time Mr. Football winner. And, of course, he reclassified to join the Crimson Tide early. Here's what Coach had to say.
We'll play the best guys, guys that can get out there and help us. It doesn't matter what age they are, and Ryan's certainly got a very special skill set, explosiveness. It goes back to the weekend or the week that we met with him and he came on campus. There was so much thrown at him, new head coach, new coordinator, new position coach, and when I hear him talk about what it is within our program that he really enjoyed and is excited about. He retained so much of that information, that attention to detail is something that you just can't take for granted.
And Alabama needs some wide receivers. They lost 3 of their top receivers from a year ago. Some other hit the portal. Jalen Hale with a knee injury. And Rodney, this guy is uber talented. I agree with everything Coach said. I mean, expect to see Ryan Williams on the field.
No doubt. I mean, he's too talented. He can do so many different things. There you see him, his ability to get deep. He can take a short pass and turn it into a big play very quickly. He can return kicks. Just one of the more dynamic players we've seen come out of the state in a while.
All right. When we come back to TITV, Alabama softball looking to get right at the SEC softball tournament. More on that. And coming up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number 205-348-9882. That's 205-348-9882. Go ahead and call in now. We'll talk to you when the show comes back right after this. And the Alabama softball team this afternoon hitting the road. They were just in Auburn last weekend to play the Tigers. Now they're going back down on the plains for the SEC softball tournament, which has Alabama facing the number 9 seed LSU. Alabama's the 9 seed, LSU's the 8 seed. That's coming up tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. So, or actually maybe Thursday. Let me double check on that. Stu, check on that for me. That might actually. No, it is tomorrow. It is Wednesday. Okay, I said Wednesday on my sportscast. I was hoping that was right. Then for some reason I was thinking it was Thursday, but it's Wednesday. All right, we're going to get to our phone calls now here on Tider Insider TV, and Dale in Moundville is going to lead us off. Good evening, Dale.
Good evening, fellas. I'm just so excited about what Nate Oats is doing in basketball. But I just wondered if Ugana, the center from Kentucky, is he still on the board, or is that out of the question now? And also, I'd like to know about Steve Mbakwe, a freshman from Canada that's coming in on defensive line, if maybe he can come in and help Alabama.
All right, let's start with basketball. The center from Kentucky. Listen, you can get good players, you get them. But, I mean, you got Sherrell coming in, 6'11 freshman. Now you got Amori. My guess is that he'll probably look for somewhere else to go. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but that would be my
especially
take.
With Stevenson probably coming back, Sears. I mean, you got 13, so you're about full.
And also on the football player, Steve M. from Canada.
Yeah, I think he kind of combined Steve M. and Mboa and Jalen Mbakwe there, Dale. But, yeah, he's a really good-looking player. I mean, he's raw. He's a guy that I think can grow into a defensive end. He's about 6'5", 260, 265, extremely athletic. There's no question about that. But, again, really raw from playing in Canada. I thought they did a really good job of recruiting him.
All right, let's keep it rolling with Caleb up in Hubbardville. Hey, Caleb.
Hey, Gary. Hey, Rodney. How are y'all tonight?
Doing well.
Yeah, y'all pretty much answered my questions about the guys in the portal, the 3 that y'all mentioned. I hope we get them. Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, good. That's always nice when you have a question and the second person has the same question and you've already answered it. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, our email question of the day right here on Tider Insider TV. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Stay with us. Alabama baseball overcame a lot in Starkville over the weekend. Now, they lost the series, but on Saturday they were barely had enough players to fill the roster after getting hit with food poisoning. They bounced back on Sunday still without some guys and beat Mississippi State 10-5, a really gutsy win. So they salvaged one game out of three. Had some guys step up. Max Grant, who hadn't played a ton, hit .333 over the weekend with 2 home runs and 4 RBI in those last 2 games. Alabama 29-18 overall, 10-14 in the SEC. And they will host LSU this weekend in a huge series for Alabama. Right now the Tide's playing down at Troy, their final midweek of the season, and they lead the Trojans 3-0 with 1 out in the second. So good start there for Alabama tonight. We'll have highlights of that game coming up for you on the news at 10. And Rodney, I want to make sure I'm clear. Sometimes I can confuse myself. I just did a story on softball playing tomorrow, but for some reason it just jumped in my head. They might be playing Thursday. But softball is playing tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. against LSU. So they're looking to get right for the first time ever having a losing record in conference play. All right, let's get to our email question of the day. And our email question of the day is brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family for all your heating and air conditioning needs. What do you know about Alabama women's basketball roster for next season? That's from our pal Jim out in Sparks, Nevada. Well, Jim, I saw your question in the email earlier, and I'm ready for you tonight. First of all, they got a pretty good team returning. Yesterday, Christabel Azuma, a big center from Campbell, 6'2", or actually a forward, but 6'2", and she was her leading scorer and the team's leading scorer and rebounder. You see her there. So she comes in with some added size. They've got 3 signees coming in. Eris Lester, a 5'11" guard from Jacksonville, Florida. Chloe Spreen, a 5'10" guard from Bedford, Indiana. And Leah Brooks, who's an outstanding player from in-state, 6'3", forward from Hazel Green High School there near Huntsville. So more enforcements coming in, Rodney, for what is already a pretty good team, and of course, made it to the NCAA tournament now a couple years in a row. So this is going to be a good basketball team as well. I'm not sure they're going to be the caliber of the men's team, but they're going to be good. Opening more doors with the success that they've had. Obviously, Gary, getting in really good transfers. All right, let's get to Supreme on the phone over in Birmingham. Real quickly, Supreme, go ahead.
Yeah, who are the candidates for the open coaching vacancy on basketball? And I know Nate Oats is responsible for everything, but who was over the defense?
Well, Claunch was a big part of it, and he left to go to UTSA. Pannone is here, and I don't know who they're looking to hire right now. It's been so busy with the portal and recruiting, Supreme. I wish I could help you more, but we got to hit the break. We'll be back after this. And Supreme, I'll try to get you a little more info on that assistant coach for next week. We were out of time. All right, that is going to wrap it up for the show. A replay coming up tonight at 10:30. You can find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. We're going to leave you with video from the Alabama A-Club Classic, the 23rd annual golf tournament on Monday at Bent Brook Golf Course. Have a good night, everybody.